Hello, this is Reloading123, and we are talking about the basics when it comes to dies. This is a 44 Magnum die set by RCBS. This happens to be their carbide die set, and I would highly suggest that you purchase carbide dies for any of your pistol calibers. And we can talk a little bit about that. Essentially, when you use a carbide die, they not only do they last longer, but it helps you avoid having to lubricate the side of pistol cases, which can be very tedious. So I would highly suggest carbide die sets, and it doesn't completely eliminate lubrication because you have to lubricate some of the larger pistol calibers anyway, but for the most part, those are the advantages. This particular die set is very dated. I don't know how old it is. It's probably one of my older sets, and really it comes with a few pieces inside it's actually what they call a 3 die set. Maybe what I should have done is shown you this 3 die set. It actually covers 44 Magnum and 44 Special. Let's just take a look. We'll just kind of dive right in. I did want to talk a little bit about locking rings, because each one of these dies has its own locking ring. This happens to be a locking ring from RCBS. This style of locking ring has the Allen head that goes straight against the side of the die. This is really not this type that I prefer. I very rarely use locking rings, but when I do use locking rings, I like this style. And you can find these on the internet. I believe Hornady has a style similar to this, but basically it clamps the die as opposed to pushes something right up against the thread. And this is actually a lock ring from Dillon. It's designed for their progressive presses when you have several stages and the dies are very close together. So I'll take a little bit of this clutter off and maybe just leave one of these rings. But this is, once you've pulled this apart, this is the resizing, what they call decapping die. Resizing because it actually resizes the case to SAMI specifications, and that's the governing body in which all these manufacturers have to adhere to for the actual dimensions. This die comes apart like so. Essentially, this lock nut, when you set it up, and I'll show you how to set this up when we actually dive into the actual reloading part itself. But what will happen here is you'll loosen this lock nut. You'll pull this decapping assembly out. You can see it kind of pulling out the bottom. It's threaded in. Various manufacturers have different versions or different ways of doing this, but this is a pretty standard way. So this really is just the body of the die. So as you can see, there's a carbide insert. Let's see if you can see that right. Basically it goes, I don't know, say 1/4 inch in, and then the rest, basically, because this is a straight walled case, when you raise the ram into this die, it just resizes the entire outside the same. That's why it can be only a 1/4 inch in. And once the die is in, this piece actually, once the die is, the shell is all the way inside, this piece here, this pin, pops out the primer. I would highly suggest that you buy more of these pins. You are undoubtedly going to break them. They come in several sizes, and sometimes they are different by manufacturer. So whatever manufacturer of die that you get, like I said, this happens to be RCBS. They make excellent carbide dies. A number of different companies do as well. Hornady, Lee makes a good die. Anyway, all the manufacturers make a good die. So essentially this is going to pop the priming piece out. So that's really the only function of this die, is to then resize, which is what the die itself does, and remove or decap the primer. It's as simple as that. So this is going to be your first process. And typically when you set these up, I'll just kind of give you the 1-2 punch. You I tend to actually leave this nut loose and decap one, then this will kind of center itself in the priming hole, and then I will tighten it. Don't put this too far down or that piece will ram into the bottom of the shell. So basically I would start with this quite high. Let's show you what quite high kind of means. Let's just say that. And then raise the ram, raise the ram, raise the ram until you get it. You'll probably get it somewhere like that. Leave it, the ram in the up position. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that when we talk about resizing, and then you're done there. So then the next die that you're going to have, or at least going through the process, is you're going to bell, what they call bell the case mouth, and that die is actually taken apart. So this piece comes together like this. This is very similar. This is your belling component, and this right here is your lock nut, and this is going to actually flare the opening of the case and allow you to seat the bullet without shearing off some of the copper jacket. So this is very easy. When you set this up, you're going to raise the ram, in other words, raise your shell inside the case, and you're going to adjust this down to the point where it actually starts the bell in the way I'm going to show you in a different video. So that's the belling. So resize, you're going to bell the mouth or flare the case mouth, and then the last step, you're actually going to resize. Okay, so this next die is what we call the seating and crimp die. And I'll show you how to set this up in a different video, but I'm just really taking the die apart to show you. This outer part of the die is going to provide the crimp. Not sure if you can kind of see a lip on the inside of that, but essentially what it's going to do is when the die is rammed all the way into the shell, it's going to, or the shell's all rammed all the way into the die rather, it's going to actually squeeze that down. What you want to do is they come with two different versions of this seating. If you're using a round nose bullet, then you want to use this particular insert into the die. If your bullets are flat or hollow point, then you want to use this flat one. You put this into the die, and then you'll use this lock ring. So really what you want to do is you want to keep your dies in good shape. You want to clean them either before or after every time you use them, and gently lube them. They're going to last you a long time. Like I said, these dies are probably 20 years old. You'll see, little signs of, I don't know if that's rust or corrosion or whatever, but the insides are quite spotless. And I really don't. You'll see that I'm pretty tough on the lock rings. This one happens to be pretty nice. This one shows some signs of wear. I really don't care too much because I've got zillions of lock rings and these are cheap. But really that's all about the die. Let me show you a little bit of how the rifle die differs. This is a 270 Winchester is the caliber die from Reloading, and Reading makes marvelous dies. They're a wonderful company to work with, and I would highly recommend anybody trying to get set up for competition or any kind of reloading that includes a significant amount of accuracy to really give Reading dies a look. Also, I didn't mention this in the last series, but do yourself a favor and read this little brochure that comes with the dies. It'll tell you everything that you need to know about setting up this specific die, or the manufacturer's recommendations for setting up their dies on your press. This is actually an interesting setup because I have a couple of different dies in this box, and of course, as you can see, I also have a couple different lock rings, no surprise. But let's just kind of take a look at how this differs. This is identically, identically is used loosely, but this resizes the case and decaps, just like the pistol die. So I'm not going to dive into that too much. This is the cedar and the crimp die. If it's a caliber that is common to have a round nose bullet, you'll actually see a round nose insert for the cedar and crimp die. Basically, again, just like the pistol, this goes inside, and the die body is going to crimp when you're ready for it to crimp, and this actual seating, let's call it the seating plug or insert, is actually what seats the bullet to the depth. And when you're screwing it down, you're changing the bullet depth relative to where you lock the base down. So that is actually the bullet cedar and crimping tool. Now in this particular die set, I threw in a die that doesn't come with it. Normally this is a 2 die set, and this is what you get with this particular box from Redding. In my experimentation over the course of time, I actually use this die for seating, and this is actually from Hornady. This is a competition style seating die, whereas this is more of a, this is more of a standard die. Now the beauty of this Hornady style seating die, and this comes in a standard 2 die set from Hornady, is that as opposed to you balancing the bullet on top of the case and then running it up into the die, this has a plug that comes down. It actually holds your bullet in what is to be perfect alignment the whole way up into the die. So this is a very, very, very inexpensive, in my opinion, die with a very competition style. So this is the plug. This piece is held in by, I don't know if you can see a little retaining piece right here. You pop that out and this plug pops right out. You clean it just like you do anything else. And if this die came with a, if 270 was common to have a round bullet, then it would actually have 2 different plugs, but 270 does not typically come with a round bullet. So this is going to adjust your seating depth. This is obviously, here's your lock ring, another style of those crimp style lock rings. And so that typically when you buy a rifle die set, again, you get 2 dies. This set just happened to have 3 because I've been experimenting with 270 for a long time. And I really highly recommend experimenting with the Hornady set. So, maybe you get 1 die set, with the Hornady set, and then 1 as the Redding, and you, for different calibers, and you determine for yourself. So that really is everything I've got for the 2 dies sets from whether it be from pistol or from rifle, and all the dies from all the manufacturers are very similar to those 2 in design. I hope you enjoy that. This is Reloading123, the section about dies. Next, we'll talk about powder measures.